The Bible reveals that your relationships with others tend to have a real effect on your financial well-being, and that ironically the quest for financial security leads to a very insecure life. I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Right now I'm going to attempt to examine the Bible and dissect some of the churchy language we can easily take for granted, digging into history and languages, as I'm able anyway, to try and get at the heart of the text so that we can hopefully see and then apply at least some of what God has for you and me in these words today. Now, I'm not formally trained in Scripture. I'm just a guy using resources and a questioning mind to try and get at the truth, and that's something that we can all do, so I hope you'll join me in that. We're looking at the book of Proverbs, this time chapter 11, verses 27 through 29, which in the ESV reads, "Whoever diligently seeks good seeks favor, but evil comes to him who searches for it. Whoever trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. Whoever troubles his own household will inherit the wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise of heart." Okay, so first up, verse 27. Whoever diligently seeks good seeks favor, but evil comes to him who searches for it. The Hebrew for good here seems to more specifically refer to benefit, and given that it is synonymously compared to seeking favor, which in Hebrew refers to acceptance or goodwill, it seems likely to refer to diligently seeking good for others, not merely good for oneself. So we might rephrase this as whoever diligently seeks to benefit others seeks favor for themselves. Someone who persists in seeking the good of others will tend to receive favor and goodwill from others as a result. This is such a simple truth, and it's not referring to some mystical law of the universe as much as it's referring to social and relational realities. As geeks, we can often feel underappreciated and undervalued, but if we seek to benefit others, that will almost certainly change. And yet not overnight or as a result of one act. The proverb says, whoever diligently does this will experience favor from others. It's in living in a consistent mode of seeking to benefit others that we end up experiencing favor from other people. But those who search for evil tend to have evil come to them. The Hebrew for evil here refers broadly to both moral evils and very often things that are unpleasant or disastrous. It tends to be the case that when people look for ways to harm others, they end up bringing harm on themselves. This works itself out in countless ways. We can likely all bring to mind someone who is biting and nasty toward others, who also seems generally unhappy themselves or seemingly prone to difficult circumstances. For this reason, it's good to ask ourselves, when we are experiencing difficulty that involves other people, okay, have I given in to an attitude or expression of anger toward others that might be contributing at least to the unpleasant circumstances I'm experiencing? Have I in any way lashed out or jabbed at someone, and could that be causally contributing to the bad thing I'm experiencing? A good thing to ask. All right, verse 28. Whoever trusts in his riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. Now, most of us probably don't think of ourselves as having riches, but if you regularly spend any money on entertainment, you have riches. It's relative, of course, but you do. Even geeks who only watch free movies and shows and only play free games are still paying for an internet connection, and likely not the slowest tier package from their provider. We have riches. Of course, we might say, well, I don't trust in my money, but most people wouldn't say that they do trust in their money. What we tend to trust are the things we spend our money on, the way we leverage our money, which is still the essence of what this proverb is getting at. When I look to my entertainment to free me from the troubles of my day or week, I am falling, as the proverb says, without realizing it. I've put my trust in something that is actually going to let me down in the end. It might feel a little bit like it's helping, but in the end, long term, it is not really worth trusting. When my sense of security is based on the savings that we have built up, that feeling of security vanishes when the unexpected depletes our savings, like it did quite a bit a year and a half ago when my wife lost her job. I learned I had plenty of room to grow in trusting Yahweh instead of trusting our planning and saving. That's not to say that planning and saving are bad. Those are good, God-honoring things. But when we find our sense of security in the fact that we've saved and planned and stuff. That's the problem. The alternative is to live righteously, which in the Hebrew here refers to living in line with what God says is right and good, living in line with His standard. And living this way leads to flourishing. The imagery of the green leaf referred to fertility and prosperity in the ancient Near East. So while this proverb may refer to having the felt experience of flourishing and prospering more than a material experience of it, the proverb does seem to have a material context. In either case, the irony here is that the person living in line with God will experience a kind of flourishing in life that the person trusting material things and resources wants to experience themselves, but can't ultimately obtain. A few weeks ago, I presented a 2 to 3 part biblical examination of how entertainment cannot really help us escape the troubles of life the way we want it to. I recommend checking that out if you haven't yet, as it explores a bit of what it looks like to experience rejuvenation and flourishing, as this proverb suggests here, as a result of being in authentic, consistent relationship with God. That series is titled The Problem with Escaping to Entertainment. All right, verse 29. Whoever troubles his own household will inherit the wind, and the fool will be servant to the wise of heart. Okay, some proverbs, even more than others, I think, take some pondering to understand the richness and the cohesion of them. And this was definitely one like that for me. I still feel like I'm missing a bit of something that might more clearly connect the first half with the second, because the two halves don't seem related to me in a very obvious way. The best connection seems to be financial. The first half describes a cause for lacking an inheritance, and the second half describes a need to work, which suggests financial need. In the first half the proverb, the Hebrew word for trouble means mostly what it sounds like: to stir up, disturb, cause trouble, or calamity. But all 4 of its uses in the book of Proverbs arguably have a financial context. One less so than the others, but all of them arguably have a financial context. So if we add that to the financial context already in this proverb, I think the troubling of one's household referred to here could reasonably be referring to financial troubles. So if we assume that just for a moment, we might observe that whoever causes financial troubles for his family will not inherit anything from them. And this seems to be a very natural principle. If we're using money unwisely, if we're causing financial troubles, we are not going to be trusted with money. We are not going to be handed down resources. But even if this proverb refers to troubling one's family in just a general sense, it's still very reasonable to expect that such behavior would result in a lack of inheritance. Now, inheritance was a much bigger deal in ancient Israel than it is for many of us today. Family businesses were much more common, and who material assets were handed down to would likely have a much bigger effect on the recipients than most inheritances do today. So the more relevant principle to draw from this, I think, is likely related to relational as well as financial support. Families are meant to be these support systems. Families with healthy relationships provide support and tangible help to each other when that's needed. But help and support from family is less likely to materialize if we are a source of trouble to our family members. The second half of the proverb says, the fool will be servant to the wise of heart. And that may be an extended description of the same person mentioned in the first half. They're not getting an inheritance, and so, this is the result, is that they're going to be serving the wise of heart. We can make the observation that those who trouble their families out of their lack of wisdom will lack needed support from their families as a result, and so will tend to be in greater financial need. When that happens, they will tend to just get work where they can find it, and the ones that they work for will tend to be those who have more wisdom than they do. It's a compact illustration in this proverb that, among other things, reminds us that those who lack wisdom tend to have financial troubles, and those who have wisdom tend to have a better financial situation. As geeks, we often don't prioritize relationships, including those with our family members. Maybe we just prefer to be alone, maybe we have trouble communicating, or maybe we're a bit awkward and that ends up causing misunderstanding or conflict. So we just kind of tend to avoid family when we can. But outside of abusive or legitimately harmful situations, ongoing disconnection from or conflict with family members sets us up for some really difficult valleys in life. We can't make our family members better people that are easier to interact with, but we can better learn how to make that navigation easier on our end and how to invest in relationship with them on our side of things. And once again, the local community of believers is a great help and place to learn, to practice how to do relationships better, how to work through awkward things, difficult things, whatever, so that in the process of growing and learning in that way, we can better experience the kind of support and help that God intends our families to be. All right, so what do you think of that? How is that striking you? What are you pondering now? Let me know in the comments. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.